Good morning, and thanks for having me. First of all, I must say it's quite the experience, as this is the very first presentation that I'm doing at a conference, so I hope I do good. And today, I will be telling everyone about something that is relevant not only to the IT companies currently operating in the market, but also something that will be a great insight tip for any up-and-coming IT entrepreneurs that are currently studying in any universities. Simply put, how to get more for an hour of your developer's work. So this comes in a lot of flavors. I'm only sharing the messages of our experience while working in Aciety that we have accumulated over the years. What works best, what's happening in the markets, and why sometimes big decisions inside the company can lead to being ahead of the market in general. So let's start with, of course, the company, Aciety. We established in 2011, and our message to our clients is this simple. Whatever technology issue you have, we have a solution. Over the 6 years that we have been actively working on expanding, we grew from 30 companies in Lithuania alone to well over 1,500 companies, 100,000 developers in those companies, and hundreds of products in our network. This growth was achieved, of course, as a startup with hard work, dedication, and a lot of help from the Kaunas University of Technology Business Incubator startup space. So let's talk about them just a little bit. For starters, it is the first academic early stage startup incubator in Lithuania. And at a glance, it has over 80 startups launched, over 300 jobs created, 2,000 professionals in the network, thousands of ideas and academics in the network as well. For further information on what they do, they work on incubation of early stage startups and teams with prototypes and MVPs, MVP development in both hardware and software, ongoing consulting, and ecosystem development. For other things that we actually have worked with them on, Technorama started at 2001, a conference that aims to expand technological and management horizons for young scientists and researchers, working with technological solutions as well as startups aiming for implementation of unique ideas in practice. And another, a favorite of mine, I should say, is Delta One, the first ever defense hackathon in Lithuania, organized in conjunction with the Ministry of National Defense, where independent participants and companies such as IBM, Teltonika, Telesoftas, Elsys Pro, and others compete in different tasks for defense. So let's get back to Aciety, why we're here. As I've already mentioned, the network grew from 30 companies in one country to over 1,500 companies in Central and Eastern Europe. That was a choice, as that is where development companies are staging from and growing at this time. So we want to grow with our network as well. Lessons learned during this growth and screening of over 20,000 companies allowed us to safely tell our clients that whatever they're thinking about, whatever their problem is most likely not a unique problem. So the solutions for these not unique problems are provided to others many times over. And as we see those problems often, we can provide exactly the things that others have gone for in the same smart way or even better. So first of all, there is a very clear, universal, and seemingly perpetual way of evolution for IT markets. They start as service markets for outsourcing, and They hire developers who work on hourly basis, and etc. However, with time, these markets start transitioning to product markets, with only a small fraction remaining for service companies. With the number of platforms such as Aciety growing exponentially, clients start looking at developers and the work they do as a commodity. So they see developers just something as similar as, say, gold, and try to evaluate them similarly. So gold is a commodity. It's the same all over the world. And so everyone who wants to buy gold, they go and buy it for the lowest price. The same goes for a lot of clients' views for development work, for outsourcing developers. They think that all developers are the same, and therefore they expect the work to be the same for cheaper. Our message and our work is to convince them otherwise. Developers and their work are not commodities, and there are many ways to prove that. So we will look at this transition from commodity, from service to actual product, and how it increases the hourly rates. And we'll look at why it happens, how it happens, and what takeaways can be taken from these things. So let's start with why it happens. As we mentioned, no issue is unique. However clients come to us, we work with hundreds, then thousands, then maybe even at this point, tens of thousands of projects. We see patterns. We can actually run analytics on them. If there is a problem, most likely somebody already solved it. Therefore, no problem is unique. Therefore, one solution is often fitting for not one, but many clients. When we look at the math, it's simple. If you have written code and it's used more than once, you can double your income. However, clients will want to buy the reused code for a cheaper price. This results in client saving money, time, and risk, while the company that you work for, or your company, is reusing it and earning more from it. So, moving on, this explains why it happens. So, what are the steps to how? Let's take the Eastern European and Central European market. Our representatives, our colleagues all over the region, they go to international conferences, they go to meetings and say, we have great developers. We have great universities that prepare those developers. The clients in Western Europe and other countries mostly lack the human resources or the people in their country. And we have developers that are just as good locally. So we offer those clients to hire us. Clients start understanding that these devs are the same, sometimes even better. The products are, So the clients start understanding that these developers are the same, sometimes even better. And as they work on the same things over and over, they accumulate knowledge. Here, the knowledge on the products shows the clients that these companies will make a lot of income by selling the same thing they developed elsewhere. So this is where the next step comes in. Small companies develop small products internally. They start selling them for their own clients, make spin-offs to sell to other companies, or eventually reach the stage where they launch consumer products, the ones that are paying for all the work through licensing. As the market gets more saturated, people start working in foreign companies, so maybe even from the ones that the clients bring in to find the developers they can't find in their domestic countries. And these salaries for the developers start growing. However, these salaries grow, but in the standard outsourcing business, the clients, they do not want to pay more. They still look at the development work as a commodity. Therefore, we have to show them that it's not the same. At some point, all the companies that work as and outsource their development work as a commodity, they come to a point in time where they reach a spot where it gets harder to hire new employees, it gets harder to retain the current employees, and finally they start losing them. Exactly because of the salary growth, of the competitiveness, and all the issues mentioned before. And that's where what we see in the market. So it starts at the service side, the 80-20 rule that you can see in the slide. It starts on the service side with 80% of companies being on the service side. So outsourcing companies and outsourcing their work, and other 20% have products that they're working on. But what we've noticed is that at the end of this transition, more and more companies go for the product. So they start developing something of their own, selling that instead of a service, or only provide service for customization of their own product. So the market goes from 80% service and 20% product to 80% product and 20% service. Moving on. The main thing is, do not sell commodities. As I mentioned, the developers, they are not, they're not coffee beans. They're not gold, bricks of gold. So that will only make your life as a developer company harder. Do not sell commodities, sell something niche and unique. So one easy thing to do here is going for something like integration. So if you don't have no product, if you're only providing development services or outsourcing or thinking of doing that, a couple of lessons from companies that have already made the change from commodity, from development work to actual product. The easiest thing is, if you have no product, but want to sell expensive and interesting goods, go for something that exists. Salesforce, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft, might be other big solutions from IBM, just adding these as main points. Thing is that when you train your developers on this side and sell these integrations and customizations for things that are expensive, you automatically improve your prices. While it will still be partially seen as a commodity by clients, as you're not working on something of your own, but you are customizing something that's already built, you are already using the code that is already written, which produces clients with much higher value and allows you to sell your hours for a higher rate, meaning you spend less time on it and you can ask for a higher price just because your developers are taught in it and they have expertise in it. Moving on, here's a more interesting point. Something we can see happening in Central and Southern Europe now, that custom work can be easily sold at a higher rate just because there's a lot more time spent on it. So for example, asking for custom software for a company, it would take 5,000 hours of coding from scratch to make something, as you can see here, a unicorn, so to speak. However, we don't think that. because every time that such software is made, it requires cutting corners. So the client does not have a unlimited budget. The client does not have unlimited time. You don't have unlimited time. You don't have unlimited people. Therefore, cutting corners will be required, and the result comes out exactly the opposite. So the common reality here is that the 5,000-hour custom job that a company made will be exactly what the client needs. However, whenever the client comes in and says, we want to expand, you will have to refactor because there were corners cut and a lot of extra work will have to be done to fill those corners back in before expanding. On the other hand, if you have a 5,000-hour code base, so that's something that your developers already worked on for 5,000 hours, the code base is already there. You already worked on it. You give them 1,000 hours of custom work to make their solution the solution they want. So front end, visuals, whatever else, and you get something much better because you already have the base and you only need to put on, say, the clothes. So moving on. The easiest thing here, two interesting solutions for maybe someone who are already doing some development work, outsourcing while they're still studying in the university or starting their first startups. First, recognize the code you have written. So if you've already done work, check if the IP rights for that code allow you to distribute it. If they do, develop an out-of-the-box version for the product that can be reused many times. For example, in the last 2 years, we keep getting people coming in, clients coming into us and saying, we have this great idea, we'll make Uber, but for doctors, or Uber, but for electricians, or Uber, but for just snacks, delivering snacks. So we give them two options. We build something, we find someone that builds their software entirely from scratch, exclusively for them, or take a license of something already pre-built and 200 or 300 hours of development work to customize the application and make it their own with, again, the base already built. Every single client that had an Uber for XYZ has chosen to go for the latter because the quote for custom work was around 50,000 euros, while the code already written, so the base code, and then the hours of work was below 30,000 euros. That's a 40% save that can be spent on other parts of the MVP easily. What else we've noticed is that every single market that we have ties to is transitioning right now. So in the upcoming, say, 5 years, most of the markets, most of the IT markets will go from service to product. In some places like Lithuania, Ukraine, Latvia, it's already 50-50, where the 80-20 rule applies. So again, in the next 5 years, it's coming, it's happening. So even markets in India, Pakistan, Philippines are already observing the same trend. So they're a bit behind, but they're already growing in the product department. What we're trying to convey as a lesson is, depending on where you are, it's either happening or will happen. So don't offer your developers as a commodity. They're not beans. They're not gold. You can't grow them in the field with knowledge of development work and then just pass them on. Reuse your code. If you are already working on an agreement right now, suggest a discount to retain the use of the IP elsewhere, which will enable you to make much more revenue in the long run and preserve your developers. That's the customization of your engines early. This is for you, but you will become a solution, a partner, and a product for someone else, helping others increase their hourly rates as well. Thank you.